Hello, how are you? Are you having a hard time finding your people? I have the solution. Maybe you need to think about doing it in a new way. You know what they say, if you do it the same way all the time, you're going to get the same results. Well, today we have two different solutions, two different ways to think about how to find your people. And you might have a little success. So, today, welcome to Genealogy Quick Start. My name is Shamele Jordon. I am your host. We are, whether you're on Facebook, YouTube, or at Philly Cam, it is so nice to have you here. And whether you are live or in replay, please let us know where you are. Announce. Where are you? What genealogy group are you a proud member of? Maybe you can meet a cousin here. Maybe you can put your surnames in. Today, we have a very special guest, Amy Johnson Crow. And Amy has done something that you might end up doing. And I bet this came up for her. And I'm going to ask her when she comes on. You know how I said you try things different way and maybe you come out with a different results? Well, when you try a different way and it keeps working, you got a methodology. And that's what Amy has created. And so I really look forward to her sharing. She has so many documents. You guys love lots of juicy documents. So let me show with you what we're going to talk about today. Amy has a methodology called the Wander method, and it's just for you genealogists. She wants to help you to be successful. And you know who else wants you to be successful? My buddies, Jim and Michael, and they're going to talk about sensing conversation ideas from the census records. I mean, one day I'm going to pull together all of their census stuff. I mean, if you look at all of the quick starts that they've done on census, you would be a census pro. You would be a census pro. So let me bring my buddies on here. Hello, Jim Beidler, columnist and editor. We also
Hello.
have Michael John
Hey,
Neal. How are you guys?
I'm good.
I'm
Good.
glad. I'm glad. So, oh my gosh, we're going to talk about census today, which of course is like the foundational record in genealogy. So, but before we get started with that, I'd love to know, you know, the census has so many questions, so much going on. We kind of just like grab and go. What do you think is one of the most overlooked aspects of the census records?
I've got two real quick ones. One is from the 1840 census, where people don't always look at the right hand page because the right hand page, you have to click to get the next image if we're using images. It asks about Revolutionary War veterans in the 1840 census within the household. People often overlook that. And in 1850 and 60 and census of that era, the information about real and personal property can lead you to other records. That's a
All right,
tick
you
mark
said
that we
that
sometimes
page
avoid.
thing like really quick. Like I have no idea. What did you just say about the which census year?
The 1840 was taken on 2
Okay.
pages. This is my
Okay.
audio visual because I wasn't alive then. But the the left hand page is the one that has the names and most of the demographic information that we use. That's the image that first comes up when we pull it up on Ancestral, Family Search, or whatever. But there's another page after that with
Yeah.
some additional information. One of the things that is most often overlooked is the name of any Revolutionary War pensioners in the household.
Very cool. So that's an overlooked aspect. Do you, Jim? Did you want to share maybe a one of your favorite census? Because there's so many of them. We all kind of start to fall in love with one or two. What's your favorite census?
I would have to say the 1900 census. I mean, first of all, because of the destruction of the 1890, it becomes a real cornerstone of leading into 20th century research. And then also, it is so rich in detail because it asks for when they, if they're an immigrant, when they entered the country, how many years they've been here. And it's amazing how many times those don't add up to the same number, whether they're naturalized or not. mother tongue of the individuals as well as their parents. So you get a lot of good demographic information, that a number of children that women have born, including how many are alive. Gives you a lot of juicy details that can be springboards to other data, other records.
Yeah, I think that one's my favorite one too, where it lists the number of children. I love that. Thank you, guys. Let's see who we have here. LaJoy Mosby is our first responder today from Columbia, Maryland. Hello, LaJoy. Hey, Angela Allen out in Houston. LaJoy let us know she's Aug Central, Maryland. Lots of surnames there. We're going to maybe come back to surnames. Cassie Adams from Cleveland. Hello, Cassie. Hello, Bursley in Illinois, Rockford. And Birmingham next week. Okay, very nice. Hey, Dean in Philly. Hello,
Go,
Maria
Dean.
Capaldi. Hey, Wayne and Grace Sand down the street. Merry Christmas and happy holidays to you. I probably wasn't supposed to say that. I'm supposed to be evergreen. Hello, Denise back. Where have you been, Denise? I think you've been here every week. Netherlands, how are you? I can't wait to travel again. Angela forgot the rep Chicago, African American Historical Society, Chicago. My cousin Floyd made it live in Sicklerville, New Jersey. Also,
I didn't know he was from Sicklerville. Jeez.
That's where he's living. Yeah, he's from Berlin, not to get it twisted, right, Floyd? But yeah, he lives in Sicklerville. You have a connection to Sicklerville, Jim?
Nothing I can tell you, but
oh boy, that sounds like a legal action waiting to happen.
Hey, Quint from Cleveland. We have, it looks like there's 2 and 2. We have 2 from Debbie's group, and we have 2 from AAGG. And we hear there's congratulations to Jim to be had. Hey, TYO Dimples from Northwest Ohio, and Wanda Looney, Birmingham. Hey, Wanda. So let's see. Let's get started with our quick start. That's why we're here. So, what is our quick start for today? It's called Sensing Conversation Ideas from the Census. What the heck does that mean?
Well, we have holidays coming up. We've had Thanksgiving. We have other ones coming up that generally revolve around food and family. Although maybe this year not so much because of the pandemic.
Yeah.
But I thought you come up with the 10 questions for your grandpa or your crazy uncle or whatever. But usually they're kind of the same old. Well, why not look at where they were at in the 20th century censuses and see who was their neighborhood, and how that might give you some jumping off points to compare, what they talk about the neighborhood with who was actually there.
That's amazing. You just brought my grandma back to me showing her the 1930 census. Really, I used to ask her questions. She could not remember anything. She would send me to other people. But when I did that research, and that was my first census, my first, big girl, doing it on my own without my cousin Floyd. And it opened up. It's like it was a door that was closed that just suddenly opened up. And she started remembering, and it's not that she would shut up, but she would shut up. She was just like, every time I talked to her, it was like she just came alive. She remembered that time. So this quick start is very near and dear to me. I didn't even suggest this. You guys created this on your own. So thank you for that memory. You guys ready for step 1 for
Yeah,
I think
conversation?
we are, yeah.
All
Do
right.
it.
So step 1 is find the person in the most recent census. So the most recent census is when?
Well, for a few more months, it's 1940 that's available to the public. In April 1, 1950, we'll open up.
And even if they're not in the most recent census, if they're too young or you can't find them or whatever, or if they are too young, find their parents or wherever they would have been listed, because sometimes using the names of those neighbors can be throwing out those names can jog a lot of memories that wouldn't come otherwise. And you don't know the names of all their neighbors in 19 whatever year it was, most likely. That can be a good, because we're looking at ways to jog their memory. That's part of the whole premise of this. Get these details to throw out, and then it can start getting them thinking about things.
All right,
When
Jim has an Aunt Flo and Bill. Who's Aunt Flo and Bill, Jim?
they were, well, the technical relationship is Florence was a first cousin once removed to my mother. She had been a childhood pal of my mother's mother, who unfortunately died when my mom was just a baby. So Florence and Bill, they were never her actual guardians, but they did take her places, Atlantic City and things like that. So they in some ways were grandparent figures to me. And they were married in 1920. They ended up living into the 1990s to celebrate a 75th wedding anniversary.
Wow.
And since Florence's family had originated in the house that I'm still in, I have a framed copy of their marriage certificate.
Oh. So you said the first step is to find them in the census. So this is
Yes,
which. Mhm.
this is actually 1930. But it wouldn't have mattered if it would have been 1930, 40, or 50, because until very, very close to the end of their lives, they lived at 323 McKnight Street. I still
Mhm.
remember that address, and visiting them there. And the two of them, Florence and Bill, they lived with Florence's mother, uh,
Oh,
Catherine, who I remember Bill telling me that they lived together some 30 years with never a crossword between him and his mother-in-law. He didn't
nice.
say that about him and Florence, I want to point out, but but he never had a crossword with his mother.
Oh, I love that. I love that. So you find them in the person in the most recent census, and then step two
And
is oh, go ahead. I'm
well,
sorry.
you study the neighborhood. I'm sorry, I tread on you here for a second, and that's because I want to say when I looked at that 1930 census, I picked out the name of the family, the Krugs, next door to them, and I remember clear as day them always talking about an Alfreda Krug. That's not a name that is plain vanilla. But I would have never remembered, what was the context, a friend, a distant relative, or whatever. Well, she was a next door neighbor. And she must have been at 321 McKnight Street just about as long as Florence and Bill were at 323 McKnight Street.
So okay, so that's step two, which is to study the neighborhood. And I think Michael has some.
I
Oh,
think
so
there's a
maybe I think Michael's is step three is to look at the demographics of the neighborhood. So
I
let's
think
take a
I
look
think
at.
the illustration we've got here, it's from Rock Island County, Illinois. The year I'll remember it when I see it. But look at in the illustration that comes up. They're not marked in red on the original census. Okay, one of these over here is an uncle of my children. But this was the Belgian part of the city. So you find your individuals and look at the other birthplaces, because there's several who were Belgian natives, but even those that were not, there's heads of household born in the United States, but they're of Belgian parentage. So that would be a question you could ask. Did they, look at the census to get a feel for, is it the Greek part of town or the Irish part of town or whatever? Look at that demographic, because those would give you some additional questions to ask. You could ask about the names of the neighbors, like Jim suggests, which is a really good idea. But looking at the occupations as well. If it's rural people, you're going to have a lot of farmers, so there isn't quite the distinction there you might get in an urban area where there's some like in Chicago, they're all working for the Pullman Company in certain parts of town. But look at, look at those birthplaces, the occupations. Those would be questions you could ask, even if your people aren't Belgian, if they're Irish or whatever. Say, I happen to notice, grandma lived wherever, there were a lot of Belgians there. It just might generate, because again, we're trying to get some you've got the list of questions in the books or online we've all seen, but the better questions, if you can get them, or conversation starters, to go back to that metaphor we had a while back, would be to look at those demographics and get specific questions related to your people, not generic questions out of a list or out of a book.
And to take it just a step further, when you talk about the different ethnics, if it's a primarily Roman Catholic area, while most Catholic parishes were set up on a geographic basis, sometimes they did ethnic parishes, and that may spur you to ask the question, well, hey, did you go to an ethnic parish if the family was Roman Catholic? It's helping you think.
Or did you go to the local? Right. If they were Irish, there's all these Belgians. Did you go to the local church, or did you go to one further away based on the ethnicity? That's a good idea too.
Most definitely the neighborhood. We were just no, I won't say that. Talking about neighborhoods. All right, so take a look at the demographics. Who's living there? I would even look at demographics of, as far as like, is it a neighborhood full of young couples with young children? Like all of that. Get a
and
feel.
Don't just look at the page your dead people or your interviewee is on. If your interviewee is dead, you can't interview them. But don't just look at and we shouldn't have to explain why that can't happen. But don't just look at that one page. Look at a few pages before and a few pages after.
I like 10. I like to go 10
Yeah.
and 10. Because you never know when the person might have skipped and started somewhere else.
Right, or how they circled around the neighborhood. Exactly.
Yeah, especially if it's in the country. Because I know when my mom was still alive when 1930 came out. And I printed out about 4 or 6 pages and took them to the nursing home where she was to quiz her about all that. And she's like, well, they weren't our next door neighbor. I don't know. Well, when I went over the roads over the route, I saw how different turns can make people who are not neighbors at all as neighbors in the census.
Yeah, I noticed that with a set of grandparents in 1940, because it was a mile from where I grew up, and I'm looking at some descendants of the family still live there, and I'm like, why are all I don't know how the guy did his route, because they're several miles over, and the people that were neighbors are, I don't know if
Michael,
Grandpa wouldn't talk first or what. I don't know.
It totally shocks me that neither one of you have made a census map. Like, as much as you guys, especially you, Michael.
Yeah, I've started with that, but I've not got one. I've not got one done yet. Other things tend to.
Has anybody out there created a census map, like taken a census year and mapped how he kind of like went around the neighborhood? I would love to know if anybody's doing that, because I think that's a cool exercise. And one day I would love to do that. All right, so that is step 3. Let's look at step 4, which is then to share the neighbor's name. So you were talking about that with your mom, Jim, and she was like, those aren't my neighbors.
Yeah, who are you talking about? Yeah. Some of them were, and it also helped me. I had different deeds listing adjoining property owners, and the census helped me kind of triangulate, where all those folks were.
And so Michael has this here.
This is a 1940 enumeration. If you're familiar with 1940, of course, this is the only year that does that. The X with the circle around it is the individual that gave the information, and the second X you see there by this guy gets an award for not the worst handwriting, but really close. But that second X with the John, that was my grandfather. For some reason, he would have been in his early 20s. He gave the information, and his parents did not. I don't know why. But I recognized a lot of those names. My grandfather was dead when this was released, so I couldn't ask him, but this would have been ideal, as we mentioned before, going down that list. And even me not being alive in 1940 and for some time afterwards, a lot of those families still live there. And in this case, he did go down the road. I can see how the census guy did his path, because a lot of those families still live there. But again, those names, we're harping on those names. That's things you want to ask. And in that case, you might even ask the person, if it's 1940 and somebody atypical is giving the information, you might just want to throw that out there. Is there any reason why grandpa,
Yeah.
why didn't they answer the questions and that they knew English? This was not one of those cases where the parents can't speak English or anything like that.
Right.
They were in their early 40s at that point in time. So they were well able to answer, but they did not, why? I don't know, because I can't ask
But
that.
yeah, that's a great question
Uh,
to ask. I know when like I said earlier, when I initially asked my grandma, she didn't know anything. But when I showed her the census, 1930, it was two families in one household, and the second household was her aunt, her father's sister, and her two children, Johnny Lee and Minnie Lee. When she saw Johnny Lee and Minnie Lee, I swear to God, she was two on that census. She went back to 2 years old. Like
and
there
the
was this squeal that came out of her. And I think that's what really kind of like she tapped into something deep. So I'm telling you guys, what these guys are talking about is real. It
the
is
one
real.
the one thing I'd like to add, and this goes off with my people are all rural. We don't believe in addresses, but if you've got urban people, you've got street addresses. You want to look at the neighbors, but make certain you're also looking at, if it's one where they had the street names and the house numbers. Make sure you look at that, so you're getting, because your people might have lived right on the census border, and all their across the street neighbors are in a different enumeration district, quite a few pages over. So you want to make sure you look at that, because there could be neighbors right across the street that are not going to be in that same series of pages, because they're in a different enumeration district because of where that line fell. So if like, I think it was McKnight Street, Jim claimed he remembered it, but I did notice it was on the enumeration if he didn't. But make certain, that was supposed to be a joke, but make certain, you're not just getting the even numbers on McKnight Street. You want to look at the odd numbers, and they could be in a different enumeration district. And you want those names too, because maybe they knew more, remembered more about the people across the street than the ones next door, for one reason or another.
Absolutely.
And so on to step 5, which is to document the conversation. So how do you guys do that?
Initially, I would record it. You always want to ask somebody if they mind if you record the conversation, and if they don't want to do a video, because sometimes for whatever reason people would rather not do that. Most people will agree to an audio conversation, but that alleviates you from having to you still want to take a few notes,
Yeah.
obviously, for a
Yeah.
variety of reasons. One, in case your equipment fails. Two, there may be a follow-up. They start talking about something and you don't want to stop them and interrupt them, because that's
Yes.
no, let them talk.
Yes.
But they may I want to ask about that because they said that. She kept going on, or he kept going on with something else. I didn't want to interrupt the flow because that was good stuff, but there was something they said 5 minutes ago that I kind of want to ask about. So you do want to take some notes, but you want to record it so you can make a transcription of that later.
Oh my gosh, I
Absolutely.
love that. Jim, you have any tips on documenting?
Well, I have another story about Florence and Bill that
Oh, I love the Florence and Bill story.
kind of connects to all this. See, my grandmother, my mother's mother, was illegitimate, or as they used to say, born out of wedlock. And the story. Well, first we had asked Florence and Bill one point, "Do you know who Llewellyn's father was?" Oh no, no. So at some point through a convoluted chain of events, we managed to find out that his name was Harry Frederick, and he was the son of the butcher on Schuylkill Avenue in Reading. And I wrote this up in a biography and showed it to Florence and Bill. And Bill looks at it very soberly and says, "No, he wasn't a son of a butcher. He was a musician." Now, this is the guy who he had no idea who he was, knew nothing about, and all of a sudden now he can tell me he's a musician. Now, he might have been son of a butcher and a musician. I think
Right,
that's how
right.
that
I think
probably
he was
works
probably
out.
he was the son of a musician who butchered every song he played.
But
No, I've got one real. It's not quite an interview story, but it's close. It goes to and documenting a conversation you had or you overheard years ago. The short version of this is we went to see a cousin, a niece of my grandmother's, and she had asked me. I hadn't done genealogy very long. She asked me if I knew about her grandfather Ira, and before I could open my mouth, my grandmother says he didn't know anything. Just like that. Just like almost spit it out. Like you could see the circle of nails in the wall.
and I bet your antenna went up at that.
You're not whistling Dixie. And all the way she lived on the south side of Chicago, and all the way up we'd heard about how good a cook she was, blah 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 blah. And so right after grandma says, he didn't know anything, the cousin says, Aunt Ida, I'd like you to help me stir the beans. Now I was maybe 15, but I was not stupid. And I heard all about her being a great cook, but she needed help stirring the beans. And I wanted to hear their conversation, but I could not. Her husband was in the same room. He was hard of hearing. And because he was hard of hearing, bless his heart, he had one volume and it was way past 10. And I overheard a couple things that made me suggest there was something scandalous about the ancestor, but that grandma knew it because they were having a combo about it, and grandma knew what it was, but she never told me. And I've documented. It's a great little story. I wish I knew what they were talking about, but that was it told me I was onto something. I think I know what now, but I found out grandma probably knew what it was, but that's not really that's not an interview, but you got to document that kind of stuff.
Thank you for your great, amazing quick start. Let's go through the steps. Sensing conversation ideas from the census. Step 1, find the person in the most recent census. Step 2, study the neighborhood, neighbors. Step 3, look at neighborhood demographics. Step 4, share neighbors' names. Step 5, document the conversation. I absolutely thank you for sensing conversations. Did you guys did you guys have any questions? Put any questions? Let's see. Some people came in. My girl Sharon from Barcelona. Sharon is chilling in Spain right now. I'm so happy you made it there safely, buddy. We have who else came in? Somebody else came in. Barb Proctor from Las Vegas. Hello, Barb. How are you? Anybody else? Excuse me.
Those
Shamele will
happen
be
in
going
threes,
into
that's what we say. Yes.
Shamele will be going into quarantine for the next 10 days.
And Casey, we have 2 guests, special guests who are here with us today. Love seeing you ladies. Thank you for having us, being here with us. Jim and Michael.
See you later.
See you later.
You later. All right. If I could find the button, maybe. All right, guys, let's move on to our special guest. Give me a second. Okay, welcome back to our second quick start. We have an extra special, wonderful guest today. And what's great about Amy Johnson Crow is you could spend a lot of time with her. You could spend as little or as much time as you want because she has this wonderful, amazing, she has workshops online. She has this community, Generations Cafe, Generations Connections. How could you not want to connect with Generations? So let's bring our special guest on, Amy Johnson Crow. Hello, Amy.
Hello, Shamele.
Did you watch Laverne and Shirley? Because I just noticed you have that cool A back there. Do you have any shirts with A's on them?
I do not, but I should get some. And I do
Yes, because
remember
I
Laverne and Shirley. Yes.
you. So, Amy, thank you so much for being here with us today. And one question that we always want to know from our special guest is your 1 minute genealogy story. Like, how did you get started? And how did you know that you were bitten by the bug?
In 1 minute? That's tough. Okay, so my dad's side of the family, my paternal grandmother, she was like the unofficial family historian. She wouldn't have called herself that, but she was. I mean, the woman labeled photographs. She was a saint. So I knew a lot about that side of the family, but my mom's side, the complete opposite. My mom actually lost her mom when she was very young. So mom grew up not knowing a whole lot about her own history. Well, so as I was growing up, I was really close with my paternal grandmother. And so, I was always kind of interested in that. I've always loved history. Well, after I had my oldest child, I realized I didn't know a lot about mom's side. And it's like, oh, I need to know something. So I went to the library one night. In my local library where I was living at the time, they had a genealogy and local history room. So I just kind of wandered in there and I'm kind of looking around, and there were these two women who kind of took me under their wing and they gave me a little tour of the room and they got me started. And it was like, I don't know, like the heavens opened up, because it's like, oh my gosh, I can find all of this kind of stuff. This is so cool. So yeah, after that, it was like I was in hook, line, and sinker.
I felt that. I felt you being in. As soon as you said the genealogy room, I was just like, yeah, she's going in right
Yeah, she's
here.
going in.
So, Amy, thank you for coming on. And your quick start for today is Wander method. So Mark Lowe has the mull and ponder.
Mull and ponder.
I don't know where they kind of cross or complement, but today Wander is what? An acronym, right?
Wander is an acronym. And before we get into the acronym, I do want to just point out that wander does not mean to be lost.
Yeah.
It really, I mean, if you look up wander in the dictionary, it just means to not take a straight path. And I think that that's kind of where a lot of us get sort of frustrated with genealogy, because we think, well, you find a record and you fill in the blanks, and it usually isn't quite that easy. So as I was trying to think, how do we how do we describe the research as a process? And it's like, well, since it isn't a straight line, you do kind of wander through. And that's when I worked up the acronym.
An acronym.
Yes.
I love it. I love it.
I love acronyms.
It's obviously working because it's a method now. So thank you for developing it. So let's go ahead and move on to step one, which is, what do you want to find?
Yes, the W. What do you want to find? And this step gets skipped so often. Like it's crazy, because it's when we, sit down, oh, I'm just going to do genealogy for a little bit tonight. And then the next thing you know, the house is completely dark because you haven't gotten up to turn on any lights. And it's like,
you haven't eaten.
You haven't eaten. What is food? But really thinking, what do you want to find? Because I can't tell you how many times I've gone onto Facebook or whatever social media, or I've gone to a genealogy society meeting, and somebody will have this question. And I am using air quotes here. They'll have this question that's like 8 paragraphs long. And they have like every detail about that person's life. And then they'll say, can you help me? And nowhere in those 8 paragraphs is a question mark.
No question.
If there is no question mark, you don't have a question. Pretend you're on Jeopardy. So, but really, it is a matter of thinking, okay, what do I want to find specifically? Because there's a big difference between trying to, what you're going to look for if you're trying to figure out a mother's maiden name versus trying to, I don't know, verify Civil War service. Two completely
Totally different.
different record sets.
Okay,
So
so we figure out, we know so for our example, what was it that you wanted to find?
yeah, what do you want to find? So in the examples that I gave, I had a couple different questions, but it might be something as simple as, where did Matilda die?
Yeah.
It could be something as, which in that case, the question that I had of where and when did Matilda die, that took me more than 20 years to figure out.
They do that to you.
They do that to you, but it does show that, and as we go through the steps, you'll see that it does kind of circle back on itself, but it's okay. It's all part of the process. Just
Massage your shoulders.
yeah,
It'll
exactly.
be okay.
Unclench the jaw, go with it.
Ooh. All right. So you have your question, you know what you want to find,
Yes.
and then you want to analyze what you already have.
Analyze what you already have. And a lot of this does go back to J. Mark Lowe's mull and ponder, because you do have to think about it. Because we are so, when we're doing research, what do we want to do? We just want to gather. We just
Grab
want to
and
look for
grab.
another database or
Grab
another
and
website
go.
or another, we just want to grab it all. But we have to stop, and it's like, what do I already have? Because for one thing, that answer to that question that you just asked, you might actually already have the answer in your notes. You just didn't realize it.
Yeah.
The time when I was doing a little bit of client research, it was a longer term project, and I had gone through, at first I was just pulling out everybody with a certain surname. I was doing a descendants project, and it was sort of an unusual surname, but as I was going through books in the early stage, just pulling out everybody with that surname. Well, then as the project progressed, there was this one descendant that I couldn't find his death record. Couldn't find it in his county, couldn't find it in the surrounding counties, could not find it. Finally, I wisened up. I went back to my notes, and there in my notes from like 3 months ago, I had already pulled out his obituary, but at the time I hadn't identified him where he was in the tree. So that note didn't make sense to me then.
Yes.
But now that I'm looking at these notes with new eyes, now I see exactly how he fits with the family. And now his obituary mentions that he died in like the next state over, that he was traveling and he died while he was away. It's like, no wonder I couldn't find his death record. But yes, stop and think, what do I already have?
Yeah.
Those notes are going to make a lot more sense to you.
And you have this wonderful record here.
Yes. Oh my gosh. This is almost embarrassing to admit, because this was actually very, very early on in my genealogy. I found this family Bible at the Ohio Genealogical Society's library. They have a wonderful family Bible record collection. And this is actually the family Bible of my third great grandmother, Matilda DeBolt Skinner Cross and Brown McFillan. And I think I got all her names in there. But this is recording her marriage to J.W. McFillan. And when I first saw this, it's like, oh, this is really cool. Her marriage to McFillan is not the marriage that I descend from. So at first I wasn't as interested in this. So I wasn't doing a whole lot of research on J.W. McFillan. Well, I entered it into my genealogy software. The J.W. McFillan was of Decatur, Indiana. I had misread it because it's not Decatur. Decatur, Indiana is in Adams County. So when I finally got around to researching J.W. McFillan, I'm looking all through Adams County, Indiana, cannot find him. And it wasn't until I went, because I'm looking at what I had entered into my genealogy software.
Right.
Well, then when I went back and reviewed my notes, it's like, oh, he wasn't in Decatur. He was in DeKalb County, which is 2 counties north.
Yep.
Once I started looking in the right county, then I found him. But
yeah,
analyze what you already have.
Analyze what you already have. I found that one of the oldest records of a vital event that I had already collected.
Yeah.
and I hadn't paid attention because of a name, Bill and Will. I was just
Mhm.
like you said, since you exposed yourself, Amy, I exposed myself with Bill and Will. It's
You know,
support
like,
group here.
it is, it's a judgment-free zone.
Yeah.
No judgments here.
All right, let's move on to step 3,
Step 3.
which is
Step
to that
Note
must be the N. Is that the
N,
N?
the N. Note what is missing. Note what is missing,
So what
because
does that mean?
so that means, okay, so you've asked your question, you've analyzed what you already have. Well, from what you have already gathered, what is missing that could possibly solve that question that you're asking? Okay.
Mhm.
So, and this is also a good time as because the A and the N, analyzing and noting, you're kind of doing them simultaneously,
Okay.
because let's say that you had already found in your notes, you had found the find a grave entry. Did you find the death record?
Mm.
So, did you find the obituary? So you're starting to sort of brainstorm, okay, what records do I not have at all? And
Mhm.
what records do I have that really could be improved?
Right.
So that's what we're doing now. We're starting to kind of make a to-do list with
Okay.
this.
Okay. I like
Yeah.
that. I like that. And so, if you have index stuff or find a grave or just no bit, get more evidence of death. That's not
Yes,
enough. Okay.
exactly. So this is a screenshot of, this is actually from my tree on Ancestry. And you can see Elizabeth with no maiden name, because I still do not know Elizabeth's maiden name. She is my great-great-grandmother, married to Peter Starkey. And my question that I'm asking is, what is Elizabeth's maiden name? Okay, it's a pretty basic question for most women. You want to
Oh
find the maiden name,
boy.
right?
Oh boy.
So, but as I'm going through and analyzing what I have, but noting what is missing. Okay, yeah, I have her death record.
Mhm.
But thinking about, what am I missing that could answer that question? Well, I'm missing the marriage record. I'm missing her marriage record.
Mhm.
Okay, that would be a good one to have.
Mhm.
I'm missing the death records of her children,
Okay.
because that might at least give a clue to her maiden name.
Mhm.
I'm also missing her children's marriage records, which, depending upon the time and place,
Yeah.
might give information about her. So that's what I'm saying is, you know, thinking about what that question is and what is missing that could possibly answer that question.
Okay.
So
Okay.
that's what was missing with her, was her marriage record. I'm missing an 1850 census where she should be about 11 years old, living with her parents.
Okay.
And I'm missing her children's death records, her marriage record, things like that. So I've got a to-do list now.
Well, guess what? Now you're on step 4. You're going to discover these new records. So you have a mountain of records. I love
Oh,
when people bring lots of records.
lots of records, so many
So
records.
talk to us
So
about this.
yeah, so unfortunately, she gets married in a time period where Ohio isn't keeping the most robust marriage records, but it
Mhm.
does give the name of the bride and groom, which is really what I'm after, right? Well, she's being married as um, Elizabeth Denoon or Demine. It's really, how are you going to count this out and figure out what it says? And I've seen so many variations in other records. But you
Mhm.
think, oh, okay, so we found her marriage record. That must be her maiden name, right? She gets married in
Mhm.
1854 to Peter Starkey, and she's married as Elizabeth either Deming or Denoon,
Mhm.
however you're reading
Mhm.
it. So it's like, hey, we're done, right? Hold that thought. Hold that thought. We'll come back to that. Yeah.
And
But
so, which record did you want to show next?
well, let's go ahead and show that death record for Matilda, who,
Okay.
yeah, because, and this is one I was talking about earlier, that I had been looking for Matilda's this is Matilda DeBolt Skinner Crossan Brown McFillin. I had been looking for her death for more than 20 years.
Mm-hmm.
And I finally found, just within the last year and a half, found this death record from Kankakee County, Illinois. And it has Matilda McFillin. Now, keep in mind, Matilda was born in Ohio. She lived most of her life in Ohio. There were, about 10 years she was in Indiana. But I had never, until this record, I had never seen her in Illinois. So how do I know that this is the right one?
Yeah.
I'm sorry, we skipped ahead. We're actually at step 5.
That's okay.
Everything.
That's okay.
But going to the discover new records, really, now we're working through the to-do list that we created back in step 3.
And we're evaluating them.
Right.
Okay.
So step 4, we're going out and discovering the records. So, and we're thinking more broadly.
Okay.
We want to make sure that we're not in, I don't want to say the rut, but we're not really focusing on just Ancestry or just Family Search or just MyHeritage. We're thinking about what other places can we look? What about the public library where that ancestor was living? Because, even if you aren't planning on going to that library, it's amazing the databases and the resources that they can make available.
Great.
It really is. Thinking about that state and that local genealogy society, boy, do they know what records are available. So making sure that we're tapping into the Family Search Research Wiki.
Oh my God. If you're not using the Family Search Wiki, you're not doing genealogy, right?
I agree 100%. I mean, whenever my research takes me into not even necessarily a new state, it could just be a new county. I go to the Family Search
place.
It is literally the first place I go. And I say that with no hyperbole. But going into the Family Search Research Wiki, because it'll tell you, it'll just give you that foundation of when did the vital record start? When did these major records, are there any gaps in the records? Was there a courthouse fire or other loss?
Yes.
And it'll link you into some resources that you may not have known about. So,
and Amy, it's not about just going to the page that lists all the online records, right? We need to read and understand about the county. I love that. I love that. So did you tell us how you knew this was Matilda, or you were just trying
so now we'll go into step 5 with evaluate everything, because it isn't enough to just gather the records.
Right. Oh, you can't, we just grab this. I thought that's how we live.
Yeah. So it's how I get my exercise. I'm just grabbing for records. But thinking about, because we do have this, and I know that there is a logical fallacy of something that's new. Because it's new, it must be right.
Oh.
But we do this because we when trying to figure out this answer, like I'd been trying to find Matilda's death for 20 some years, it would be so easy to find this one record. Hey, it's got the right name. It's a death record. I'm going for it. This is my story. I'm sticking to it. But this is where we have step 5, evaluate everything, which is not only evaluating that record by itself, in isolation, thinking about, well, who gave the information, how did that informant know what they were talking about?
The informant is like huge in the evaluation.
Oh, right? It is huge. And we definitely want to do that. But we also want to evaluate this record in context with what we already have.
Ooh.
Or are we trying to make a square peg fit into a round hole?
Oh.
Okay. Because if that record that you just discovered, if it is conflicting with what you already have,
what do you do?
Exactly. You're going to have to resolve it. Which one is right, or are they both wrong? which is definitely a possibility. We don't want to discount that possibility. But yeah, this is where we do have to take that step back. And
it's
how does
not
this
about the
record
whole thing being, if one thing in there is wrong, it's not the whole thing being inaccurate. The record
Right.
is accurate based off of the question, right, that you're asking. Right,
Exactly.
Amy?
Exactly.
Okay. Let's get on to some of these records you have, because you
Yes.
said there could be conflicting. So
There, yeah,
let's look at some
there
conflict.
could be some conflict.
We need drama. Without drama, it's no show, Amy.
Yeah. Can we go back to Matilda's death?
Which one we want to go to?
Matilda's death. You had it up a second ago, and I threw you off. I'm sorry. There we go. That's
okay.
it. That's the one right there. So, like I said, Matilda had lived most of her life in or near Perry County, Ohio. And she was in 2 censuses in Indiana, but she's living like next door to her children in Indiana. So that made sense. But then she goes back to Ohio. So why am I confident that this seemingly random death record out of Kankakee County, Illinois, how do I know that this is my Matilda McFillin? Well, I'm comparing this with the things that I've already gathered that I'm confident about. So her age is right. Her place of birth is mostly right. It says Fairfield, Ohio. It should be Fairfield County, Ohio.
Okay.
And Fairfield, Ohio is not in Fairfield County. Go figure. But
Okay.
but that's close enough. I can see what they did there.
Okay.
But and also I can put this into context with another record that I had found. There was one of her grandsons had applied to the Sons of the American Revolution in the applications on Ancestry.
Mm-hmm.
And in his application, he said that his grandmother died in Illinois in 1899. And that's exactly what this record is. And
Wait, Amy, you mean you didn't just like go into a ball because the 1890 census isn't available and say, I can't do this?
My thing is, why couldn't she have lived another few months and made it to the 1900 census? I mean, seriously, Matilda, come on. Could have hung on a little longer. Yeah.
What would you like to share with us next?
Okay, so the next one really is where we're getting into a ton of conflict. We're back to Elizabeth. And you would think that finding Elizabeth's marriage record would let you know that that's her maiden name, because she's getting married as I believe she was 19 at the time. So probably not too many marriages when you're 19.
No.
But we do have the marriage record, and it does show her name at marriage, we'll put it that way, as either Deming or Denoon. All right. But remember back in step 3, and note what is missing. I had all sorts of other records I could look at, including her children's death records. And what did they say about her? Now, we do need to keep in mind her, we do need to keep in mind those informants, but we still need to look at those records, right? So as I'm going through and looking at her like 8 children and finding their death certificates, most of them gave her maiden name as either Deming, Demeen, or Denoon. All sorts of wonderful spellings. So we have Oliver, and Oliver's wife, Lizzie, who would have been Elizabeth's daughter-in-law, lists Elizabeth's name as Elizabeth Ann Denoon. Okay, life is good. This is lovely. But then we go to Elizabeth's, one of her other sons, Andrew, and his death certificate lists her maiden name as Wilson. Where in the world did that come from? And it would be really, really tempting to just say, oh, well, the informant, Guy Starkey, who would have been Elizabeth's grandson, Well,
Mm.
Guy just didn't know what he was talking
Yeah,
about.
yeah, that's what I would say.
It would be okay. He didn't know. He got confused, and you just discount it. But remember, one of the things that we had listed that was missing was finding Elizabeth in the 1850 census as a child living with her parents. So I looked for Elizabeth in 1850 and found 11-year-old Elizabeth Wilson living with the Danoon family. Yeah, that's too much of a coincidence.
Yeah, that's pretty
That's just too much of a coincidence. And this family is living right smack dab in the middle of all. I mean, it's not like just this random family. No, they're in the right place. It's just too much of a coincidence that Wilson is associated with her as a surname, and there's an Elizabeth Wilson of the right age living with the Danoon family. So that's where we come into step 6, which is the R, repeat as necessary.
Oh, you always have the rinse and repeat.
Yeah, rinse and repeat. Yep.
Rinse and repeat.
Yeah, because you might actually end up going all the way back to what are you trying to find? Because it might end up that, she really wasn't Elizabeth. It's actually somebody else. Yeah. But maybe it's, I really need to go back again and analyze what I have. Maybe I need to really think about what else can I look at? What else do I need to discover? What's missing? Do I need to look at more and different sources and discover more things? And obviously we're going to need to evaluate. But it's that just repeat is necessary. And that's what I'm saying. It's not a straight line, but that's all right. It's just part of the process.
Wander around.
Just wander through.
You need a little tchotchke that helps people to wander.
Yeah.
No, we need to get into the 80s, do the worm so they can do it like that.
I couldn't do the worm in the 80s.
Huh?
I couldn't do the worm in the 80s. So yeah, I'm going to come up with something else.
I couldn't do the Running Man either. I was like, am I really a kid from the 80s? Like, what's going on? All right. Amy, that was fabulous. Let's look at the quick start, the Wander method for genealogy. Step 1, what do you want to find? Step 2, analyze what you already have. Guys, we are grabbing. Look at it. Analyze it. Step 3, note what's missing. Step 4, discover new records. Oh my God, Family Search Wiki is where you start, but that's not where you stop. Step 5, evaluate everything. Step 6, repeat as necessary. And step 7 is to go and hang out with Amy at Generations, right, Amy?
That's right.
We bring Michael and Jim on for our question of the day. And that question is, what is your favorite ancestral swag? And Amy actually helped us with this question. Amy and Michael came together for this one. You guys who are watching, tell us what your favorite one is too. And Michael, you had a great one. You have actual visual. Let us see.
I have the legit thing. This is a piece of advertising from the 1950s. Kind of blurry because I'm just out of focus because that's how I roll. But it's got it. You can see it better right here.
Hold on, put it up again. I'm gonna solo you.
It's got my great grandfather's name on it. Yeah, it's still blurry. It's the camera's focusing on my lovely face.
Move it back some to your face.
Oh,
that's too far, Michael. There's
you can read it though with my glasses.
Yeah, I can read it like that.
You're right. It's better when it's anyway. It's got his name on it. This type of seed corn he was selling. It's a little screwdriver that I quit using because I was afraid I was going to break it.
Jim, Amy.
Well, if Michael was an ancestor of mine, I would bring out my genealogy tip of the day pen. but instead, I'll settle for the coming of age trunk that has my great grandfather's name etched in the lid of it from 1867.
Wow. Oh my gosh. Cool. Amy?
I bought a matchbook off of eBay from my dad's Texaco service station. And I was thrilled to have found it on eBay. You know, it's like, buy now, send it to me. And I was so proud. And I told Dad about it. He goes, you know, I have an entire case of those down in the basement. Thanks, Dad.
I love that, Amy. And Denise Payne said, this is your wander method is a great method, especially for those of us who are information grabber and chaotic researchers. Thank you, Amy. Maria said, happy holidays to everyone here. Guys, thank you. I really appreciate our time with you today. See you in a couple of weeks. Thank you.